Okay, so I think it's about time to get started. I want to welcome everybody to our second meeting of this wonderful year 2023. As I mentioned in the meeting in February, we are going to be attending alternately in person and virtually. And we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting in person. It's so wonderful that we have this ability now to be able to meet virtually for at least a few of our meetings so that it's certainly more efficient in terms of people having to travel, but still being able to communicate with each other in a meaningful way. And then also our ability to meet in person, because there are certain things, obviously, that we all learned during the pandemic that you just cannot replace online. So thank you all for being here. Please know that your feedback is very important to us on those issues that I just talked about and other issues, particularly the substantive issues that affect these very, very vulnerable individuals that we're dealing with in this highly critical area of the law. Our primary goal today is to review ideas for the coming fiscal year and to receive your input about these projects, whether or not you think that we're going in the direction that we need to go, and whether or not we need to kind of steer in a different direction. So please let us know. We're very, very appreciative of your comments, both on substantive issues, but also about the process for our meetings to make sure that these meetings are as efficient and as beneficial to everyone involved as they possibly can be. And as always, thank you all for the support that you give to these families, to these children on a daily basis. You all are the committed professionals who really are in the trenches doing this work. And we're also very appreciative for all of that all of you do. So thank you. And thank you for giving of your time to be with us today. So at this time, I want to invite my esteemed colleague, the wonderful and brilliant Justice Rebecca Huddle.
Well, thank you for that, Justice Lehrman. And I want to introduce a couple of housekeeping matters. But first, before we get to that and before we get to our substantive work together today, I want to say hello to everyone, commissioners, jurists in residence, collaborative counsel, special guests. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate that May is an extraordinarily busy time of the year. It is Mother's Day, it is graduation, everyone's graduating, it seems. It is the end of the legislative session. The dockets are busy, and we appreciate that everyone here are the busiest people. Otherwise, you would not be also working on this commission. So we appreciate your carving out time out of a busy May to contribute to the meeting today. It's great to see you all here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. So now to those housekeeping matters. The meeting today will not go past 2, and so accordingly, we won't be taking a lunch break or any other break. While folks are speaking during the meeting, unless you are speaking, please stay on mute. And if you need to step away, please feel free to turn your camera off, but most importantly, please remain on mute. Committee and collaborative council members are participating in listen-only mode, and we're broadcasting live on YouTube. The question and answer function is available if needed, but there is not a chat function available today, as I understand it. Thank you again for helping us make this virtual meeting as seamless as possible, and I will turn it back over to Justice Lehrman.
Thank you, Justice Huddle. So I invite you to please now look at tab 1, which is page 9 in the PDF in the meeting notebook that was distributed before this meeting. This document includes commission, committee, and collaborative council membership, as well as staff. And we have a few changes to share with you today. So we have one new member of the Legal Practice and Process Committee, Carla Baker. who is one of our commissioners, recently joined the Legal Practice and Process Committee, and this committee oversees the work of the Legal Representation Committee and Parent Resources Work Group. Carla, we know that you will make a significant impact, and we appreciate your leadership in this critical area. So thank you so very much for taking this on. We also have a new member of the Data Committee. Jen Meyer is the Research and Data Manager of Text Protects. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Meyer to the Data Committee. Thank you. We will be joined today by a very special guest speaker, and we will introduce that person later in the meeting. So let's go to the adoption of minutes from our last meeting. They were distributed behind tab 2, which is at page 13 in the PDF in the meeting notebook in advance of this meeting. Now we're going to assemble our votes. Are there any corrections to these minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the minutes from the February 10th commission meeting?
I so moved. This is Darlene Byrne.
Thank you, Judge. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are adopted. Okay, Jamie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Justice Lehrman, and welcome everybody. I know at the past meeting, we were hoping to welcome our new-ish DFPS Commissioner, Stephanie Muth, and Deputy Commissioner Jennifer Sims, and I believe they're here with us on screen today. So I'd like to invite them to introduce themselves to the Children's Commission if we can spare a moment for that.
I was waiting to see if Commissioner Muth started. I'm Jennifer Sims. Very nice to meet you. I'm the Deputy Commissioner at DFPS. I have a long history of work at the agency. This is actually my third time working at the agency and my second time working as a Deputy Commissioner. So I'm thrilled to be back and working on these issues. And I've always really appreciated the work of the Children's Commission and the great progress that you've helped us make. So thank you for letting us join you.
And thank you. I was having technical difficulties, Jennifer. Thank you for jumping in. I was toggling between the minutes and I lost my Zoom screen, so I couldn't put myself off mute. Good morning, everybody. Stephanie Muth. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. I guess it's been a whirlwind since starting in the position in January, but while I'm somewhat new to child welfare, it doesn't feel that way anymore. But I have a long history of working in health and human services, and of course jumped right in with the legislative session and the agency's priorities there. So I look forward to continuing the partnership.
Thank you both for being here today. We certainly appreciate it and hope that you will be able to join us in person for the next meeting. We certainly appreciate the important work that you do and know that you all are on the hot seat a lot, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for being here, and we very much respect and appreciate your leadership, and good to see some familiar faces, and I feel like we're in very good hands and look forward to a strong continued partnership with you both. I regret to inform we do have a staff change. It's the first one in 3 years. Monica Mahoney left the Children's Commission, and she is now the Communications and Operations Support Administrator with Pathways Youth and Family Services with Tina Amberboy. So she hasn't gone far, and she'll remain a close friend to the commission, but she is no longer with us at the commission. So I wanted to share that staff change. And with that, I'd like to get to kind of the heart of the meeting for us, which is for the staff, is that we want to share with you some of our ideas for fiscal year 2024. Believe it or not, we're about to enter the fourth and final quarter of this fiscal year. And really, this is our planning season. And the Administration for Children and Families requires us to submit an updated plan at the end of June. and a self-assessment. And so the conversation we're going to have today will inform that work. And then we'll return in September, as we always do, and share with you our proposed budget and updated strategies and slate of activities for fiscal year 24. So this is really critical for us. And everything you're about to hear is informed by the committees who are the backbone of this organization, who really are our ears and eyes and help us stay informed about the greatest need for the court improvement program. I am going to share my screen. I have a very minimal PowerPoint that will just kind of guide our discussion today. And I'll start with collaboration. This is the first of 5 goals that we have. It doesn't have a separate committee, but the other 4 do, and you'll hear about them momentarily. So this is kind of the operational part of the Children's Commission. The heart of what we do is collaboration. And that starts with you all, with the actual Children's Commission and the 4 standing committees that you're all about to hear about. We'll continue that in its same form. I think we'll keep the format 2 in-person, 2 virtual meetings per year with our commission, and then the committees will meet usually once in person, and then the rest will continue virtually. The Collaborative Council will largely remain as is, although we might make a couple of changes to our annual meeting that we do with the Collaborative Council. They'll continue to be invited to our biweekly call with OCA and DFPS, and we very much appreciate their participation with the Children's Commission. Regarding communications, we are very likely to get a new look to our website in the coming fiscal year, and we're really excited about the possibilities for that. Some of the things we've kicked around are providing more targeted information for different stakeholder groups, like for instance, to have a portion of our webpage dedicated to parent resources, so that once you go to the landing page, it's really clear if you want resources for parents, that's where you should be directed. So we're excited about the possibilities, and that should be coming in the coming fiscal year. Regarding DFPS partnership, we always work very closely on many of our initiatives with DFPS, but I think the most activity you're going to see on this strategy in the coming fiscal year is, of course, the Child and Family Services Review, or the CFSR, which happens about every 4 years. And we're a year 2 state, and we're signed up to be reviewed in fiscal year 24. So that will take a lot of partnership to review data elements and also stakeholder engagement. And we've been on regular meetings with the Administration for Children and Families and the DFPS already to prepare for this process. And I think it's a good opportunity for our state to continue to make systemic improvements. And regarding assistance to local jurisdictions, this is an ad hoc strategy that we like to keep a placeholder in case there's a need for somebody to put on a training and they need additional support, or maybe some financial resources to kind of do ad hoc projects. So with that, I am going to turn it over to systems improvement, to Jocelyn and Amy, to tell you about their plans for FY24.
Thanks, Jamie. Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone. So Amy and I are not going to go through all of these. We're going to highlight a few of our kind of new revised initiatives that we're considering under systems improvement. The committee met last week, I believe, and had some great feedback for us. So we'll continue to revise this, but this is kind of a snapshot of what we're thinking in our big changes. Then we welcome your comments and questions at the end. So the first initiative that I'll discuss is kind of our trauma-informed and mental health efforts for children, youth, and families. The Children's Commission's work in the trauma-informed space has continued to evolve over the years. We've been collaborating with several court teams over this past year plus to implement trauma-informed court projects. And as we've been going through this project, we're really evaluating the best way to move forward in this trauma-informed work. So first and foremost, a great suggestion during our Systems Improvement Committee, we want to redefine the topics under this area of systems improvement and kind of retitle it to trauma-informed and mental health efforts for children, youth, and families, or something similar to that. So working on just kind of the way we refer to the work. And then we're also looking to continue our collaborative efforts, but not necessarily under the guise of the statewide collaborative on trauma-informed care formally, but definitely continue those collaborative efforts that we've been building and working on over the years. So current suggested projects for this work is to take kind of the lessons learned and momentum from our trauma-informed courts project and create kind of a a judicial learning collaborative among our judges implementing trauma-informed practices and policies. So the idea and hope behind this is that maybe we'll create some kind of across the state, cross-court information sharing and learning, and kind of create, continue to build out our trauma-informed courts network and support network for our judges and court teams working on this work, and really advance it more broadly across Texas. And then we also have a couple of our courts in our trauma-informed courts project that are they're implementing a phased service plan approach with their families. And we see a potential data project to more closely track the impact of this approach on time to permanency and reunification rates. So kind of tossing out the idea of possibly doing a deeper dive, a data dive on this that may live over in data committee. And then last June, we partnered with the Judicial Commission on Mental Health to host a roundtable on mental health crisis faced by our children and youth in both child welfare and juvenile justice systems. And we've continued to prioritize this work, and we've been a little bit in a holding pattern as we wait to see what the legislature does regarding this issue, so that we can address those changes, that any changes or legislative initiatives that might come out of the session. But we do still continue to form a work group that and collaborate with JCMH to address these issues with kind of that judicial lens, in addition to, of course, responding to the legislative changes and new initiatives. That's kind of everything under our trauma-informed and mental health area. And then the second thing I'll highlight on my end is a community-based care readiness initiative for our legal community. So we've done a lot of work, and Jamie's really been the point person on this community-based care transition and knowledge. But we see an opportunity as implementation of community-based care continues to accelerate across the state, that we need to support the judicial and legal communities with this transition. So we'd like to collaborate with the Texas Alliance for Child and Family Services to help support their CBC readiness efforts and any other community efforts. So our current idea for this support is to host conversations targeted towards our judicial and legal communities in regions that are getting ready for community-based care, and kind of hopefully those community conversations will take place alongside the broader community readiness efforts. So we'd like to be open to the needs of each community and flexible to what support we can offer as those conversations occur. And I will pass it to Amy.
Good morning. So I'm going to talk about two prospective new areas of expansion. The first is youth voice and normalcy. One topic that really continues to arise during various judicial trainings and conversations relates to young adults who are leaving the foster care system and what supports they need to help them as they transition to this kind of new independent life. So we would like to get your thoughts on exploring a work group or a committee that really brings together professionals who work with this older youth population to identify gaps in resources, help clarify what young adults' rights are and how best to support them. The most important piece of that work group is definitely going to be including those with lived experience. So we really want to hear their voice and help drive this work, because nobody knows better what they need is the youth themselves. And so we're kind of combining youth voice and normalcy, because we also want to make sure that this transition into independency is normal as best it can be. So we're excited to kind of start that conversation and kind of see where it leads. The last idea that we want to present to you relates to a work group that supports kind of very specific populations. So last year we had a roundtable involving the Forensic Assessment Center Network, FACN, and this is a network that DFPS utilizes for consultation of mainly investigation cases, but it can be various other stages too that involve kind of complex medical issues. And so one of the recommendations that came from that work group is really to provide guidance to parents and family members who might interact with this system during a CPS case. And so we want to bring together a work group with families who have experience with the FACN, advocates, the legal community, and of course DFPS to provide guidance for a situation that is a little bit unique, but very challenging and very stressful. Our last kind of branch off is related to our commercial sexual exploitation. So the one advocate kind of made a good point, which is we're kind of wanting to expand into sexual abuse because a person may not identify with being trafficked, but they can identify with being or receiving unwanted contact, force acts. And so we'd kind of like to broaden the trafficking lens and focus a little bit more on a very delicate and difficult topic of sexual abuse. So those are kind of the two areas that we would love to add to your consideration. And I'm going to pass it back to Jamie.
Thanks you both. I'm going to pull down my screen for a minute so we can see each other, and we'll do this after each of the committees. I want to clarify one thing. What you're seeing on the slide is our current strategic plan, and what Amy and Jocelyn just talked through would be some modifications to what you saw on the screen. And with that, I will open it up for feedback or questions. What do you all think about these ideas of trauma-informed learning collaborative, community-based care, expanding from trafficking to sexual abuse, and doing FACN resource?
I see Anne's hand up.
Anne, yes, love to hear from you.
Thanks, Jamie. No, I just wanted to respond. And Amy, thank you for talking about lived experience, particularly of youth. And from Casey Family Programs, I may be able to assist you in helping to reimburse youth for, providing their experience. We like to reimburse parents and youth at a reasonable hourly rate for doing that for us. And so if I can assist you, Amy, please do just let me know.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne. I love hearing that.
Wow.
Mrs. Huddle, please.
Jamie, I have more of a question than commentary, and that is, could you or someone on staff sort of back up a little bit and give some background about sort of what is currently already happening and sort of what the add would be or what the tweak would be? Just because I certainly don't remember all the details, and I suspect others on the call don't either.
Sure. For all the things that were just mentioned, or one in particular?
Well, I mean, in particular, the sort of youth aging out, what's in place now around that we're involved with?
So I'll take a pass at it, and then I'll send it over to Amy and Jocelyn. But essentially, we don't have a very active strategy around youth aging out of care right now, which I think is the idea. In the past, we partnered with Texas CASA on a normalcy guide, and they did a great job creating it, and we've helped them to promote it. And we do have a lived experience compensation policy where we're trying to make sure that anyone with lived experience, whether it be a young adult or a caregiver, is reimbursed for their time. But beyond that, we don't have a concerted effort. And particularly around this older youth population, we have not had a targeted strategy on how to better support them. And we've heard a desire from our judges. They want to hear from those who are doing PMC dockets, from those who exclusively serve older youth or have more older youth on their docket. And we know about it from the lawsuit and the legislature that this is just a population with a great need. And so our thinking is that at the Children's Commission, we can focus on that discrete issue and give it more attention and see what resources or trainings or materials are needed to better serve that population. And Jocelyn, Amy, anything you wanted to add to that?
Just that typically during the conferences, the commission does usually have a session involving youth with lived experience, and those conversations and those questions always like if there was another hour, it still wouldn't be enough. And so that's kind of what spurred the idea of maybe we need to have a devoted space for it, because all the judges are always engaged, asking a lot of questions, and the youth seem to enjoy getting their voice heard by the judges there. And so we thought maybe this is a good avenue to look at and expand it. I do sit on, DFPS has a SIL, supervised independent living work group, where they're working on a possible like change in name and learning how to work that a little better. But that simply focuses on just one piece of a much bigger process. And so we wanted to expand a little bit.
Judge Graves Harrington? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was muted. Good morning, everyone. I do think that it is a really good idea for some collaboration in this area. What typically happens is that PMC courts will get information about the children aging out of care, because that is where the majority of it is happening. But we also have TMC cases where children are aging out. And so a lot of the judges who are hearing the TMC cases, we don't have the wherewithal to actually assist these children in navigating through, and sometimes until it's too late. And then once it's too late, there's nothing that can be done. So I think it's a wonderful idea for the collaboration and to provide or expand the information across the board.
Thanks, Judge.
Can I just add that I just met with a Laura Villarreal yesterday with the Texas Workforce Commission, right? You're shaking your head, so I don't need to say anything else. You already, because they have the foster care initiative where they actually start working with children in care at the age of 14 and actually help place them in, excuse me, vocational school settings. So they do short-term certifications for positions, jobs that are like vacant and need employees. So well-paying as well, like CDLs and air conditioning certifications, things like that. So I'm excited about that, and I'll be sharing that with the network, with the CASA network, but I think they'd be a good partner in that collaboration. I just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Vicki. That is definitely part of the plan. I appreciate you mentioning that, though, and we will hopefully get Laura and her colleagues in front of our judges soon. And it is incredible what TWC is doing, and we want to make sure everybody knows about it.
Is the initiative to help get these children who are interested in going to completing their or continue their higher education? How does that fit into this?
So I think that the whole system, the education system, is really moving towards college and career readiness, but also workforce or military readiness, and making
Right.
sure that there are different pathways for young adults. And we really need to be youth-led and hear their voices. So if they want to do a vocational program and get some experience and get some on-the-job training, and that sets them up for a career, and then later on they might go to college, that could be the pathway for them. And we want to help support whatever pathway they choose. And so it's a very critical partnership to not just be focused on post-secondary education, but also workforce opportunities. Judge Morales?
Good morning. I know that I've worked with Texas Workforce Commission before, and we incorporated the local community college where they have certification programs. And so I was able to lock in the tuition waivers through that aspect. And then hopefully later on, they're able to, if they want to pursue an academic, an academic degree as opposed to certification, they already have their tuition waivers locked in. So that may be something we can look into as well.
Great
Right.
point. Thank you, Judge Morales. Anybody else have feedback for any of the proposed new projects?
I do, just on that, to continue on that path, would the focus of it, would the sole focus of a group like this really be around educational, vocational, military readiness and connecting with, for example, I didn't know that there were waivers for tuition. That's amazing. I wonder whether judges know and whether there is a systematic, process in place to give to let the youth know about it. But is that the primary focus, or are there other sort of commonly occurring legal or other kind of just social supports that would be in focus with the group?
I think there are, and we'll have to take direction from the subject matter experts that we elicit to be part of this, but just off the top, medical needs, identification documents, housing, those are all absolutely critical, and we need to make sure that youth are well set up when they leave. And what our focus will be is judicial engagement and the role of the attorney and the judge to help young adults be on a pathway toward independent living that's sustainable and healthy and safe for them. Vicki.
And by normalcy, do you mean independent living? Is that what that means?
I think normalcy means having experiences similar to their peers who aren't in foster care. And so, it's certainly not normal to leave foster care and be homeless. We don't want that to be their life experience. So what can we do as a state and and the stakeholders involved in the system to make sure that doesn't happen and make sure that they have a healthy transition to adulthood?
Yeah, I think that whole normalcy piece is critical. Because sometimes we think it's simply a matter of not having to have the house that the child's going to spend the night in, having everybody background checked. It's more than that. It's like, how do you learn how to cook? Can somebody help me balance a checkbook? How does that work? How do you manage money? All of that is normalcy. So all that starts even before they're exiting care. Stepping backwards for a hot second, Judge Gonzalez is running I'll stop talking about that then in Dallas. And to answer your general question, I like the groupings that you have, the trauma informed with the mental health. I think this all goes well together. And your trafficking and sexual abuse. I think in short, I think you did some great groupings here because the topics are certainly interconnected and need to be addressed holistically. So I think this is a good way to do it.
Thank you, Vicki. Appreciate that feedback. Dr. Blau?
I also just wanted to comment about that transition between, sort of childhood and adult time frame that I don't know if Texas has one of these grants. However, maybe on the radar screen would be SAMHSA's Healthy Transitions Grant Program. This year's announcement, I think, was due back like last week, so it's late for this year. However, it may be something to put on the radar for next year that the state could coordinate across child welfare, mental health, perhaps even juvenile justice, and thinking through if there is not one, most likely might have come through the mental health agency. I'm just trying to think about, but that it could be, these are like $1 million grants to help create the infrastructure and the ability for the state and then a pilot local community to ensure that the transition from childhood to adulthood, the kids don't fall through the cracks. So just pointing that out and something that the state or others may want to consider going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Blau. Judge Graves-Harrington?
So really quickly, I just wanted to speak about the topic of the trafficking and sexual abuse. I can't remember what the parents were, but in an NCJ-SCJ meeting yesterday, there was a discussion about just runaway in general. I think sometimes we just kind of encompass trafficking, everything is trafficking, and there are a whole host of other things that are happening. So I think we need to focus on runaways and honestly, just some practical tips to assist us. We have a lot of children who are running away and becoming, what do they call, not traffickers, but they sell drugs because they're minors. And so that's another focus that I think we really need to look into. And I don't even know where to start with that, but it's a problem and I'm seeing it in my court. And it's frustrating because I don't know what to do and I don't know where to turn. And the answers are not as simple as have the child picked up and placed somewhere else, because when they are placed somewhere else, they are still finding their way back to whether it's sex trafficking or drug, or they're dealing drugs or whatever. So I think there needs to be a focus on runaways. And if we could just kind of add that in, because not all children are in sex trafficking when they run away, but they do get into a whole host of other things.
Great suggestion. Thank you, Judge Graves-Harrington. So in addition to the FACN and the sexual abuse, maybe we could do something discreet on runaway issues, runaway related issues. Great feedback. Thank you all so much. I'm going to go ahead and transition to legal practice and process because I think there's a lot to talk about there as well. And I will turn it over to Dylan and Renee.
Thank you, Jamie, and good afternoon, everyone. The Legal Practice and Process Committee convened on April 28th and reviewed a slot of proposed projects for FY 2024 from its various work groups and committees. In furtherance of our goal to ensure that children, youth, and family involved in the child welfare system have access to justice and their rights protected, 3 areas of focus were identified by the LPP committee for next year. These include increasing resource accessibility for children and parents, training for attorneys and resources for parents related to pre-litigation issues and support, and information about reinstatement of parental rights, and the continued creation and updating of the Commission's various guides and project deliverables, including but not limited to the bench book, both toolkits for attorneys representing children and parents and attorneys representing DFPS in child welfare cases, a mediation toolkit, a pre-litigation guide, and the parent resource guide. Discussion regarding resource accessibility, including identifying ways to better reach out to children via electronic means and the best avenues for disseminating resources to parents, was definitely part of the conversation. We will continue to work with our partners such as Family Helpline and Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, Texas Foster Youth Justice Project, and Family Defense Project to ensure that the resources that we are creating are reaching our target audience. In the 2 most recent cycles, LPP work groups and committees have developed several resources to explain the attorney-client relationship and the rights of youth and parents experiencing child welfare cases. In 2024, we will continue this trend with a focus on pre-litigation issues and the reinstatement of parental rights. In addition to creating resources for children, youth, and families, the LPP committee finds that it is needed to provide information and training to attorneys representing parents and children on these pre-litigation issues. Suggested resources include one-pagers, pamphlets, and online content such as webcasts and video shorts similar to those created by the Family Helpline. This concludes my portion of the LPP report, and I will now turn it over to Dylan to discuss the LRC and their recommendations for fiscal year 2024.
Thank you, Renee, and good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to update everyone on a few ongoing Legal Representation Committee projects that will carry over into 2024. And the first one is our Standards of Representation Committee that is working to develop and define what quality representation looks like for court-appointed attorneys for parents and children. We had our most recent meeting of the committee this April, and it has continued to examine the standards proposed by the American Bar Association, the National Association of Counsel for Children, as well as the 20 states that have defined their own standards of what quality representation looks like. And after reviewing all those standards, the committee has now settled on a framework of how they want to organize defining quality representation. And that framework is going to be dividing it into 6 phases. The first, defining the attorney-client relationship. The second, the investigatory phase. The third, the preparatory phase. The fourth, the conciliatory phase of cases. The fifth, the adversarial phase. And the sixth, the appellate and post-judgment phase of cases. The committee members will now begin the process of actually taking those sections section by section and starting to define and draft the language of what quality representation looks like and what the standards will be. We'll hold our next meeting of the committee June 30th. That will be a virtual meeting, but we will have several meetings over the course of FY 2024, and the work will probably continue into FY 2025 as well, because I think it is going to take a long time to kind of get this right. The next project that I wanted to update people on is the 2 new projects that were sort of developed by the LRC in FY 2023 that we're continuing to work on. The first is trying to assist with attorney retention and recruitment to make sure that judges have enough quality attorneys on their court appointment lists so they're able to provide representation to parents and children. And one of the things we've developed to try to address that issue is some spotlight videos so that experts in the field of child welfare can share their stories about how they got into the field of child welfare. So the Texas Children's Commission has now, in collaboration with the Texas Indigent Defense Commission and OCA, we've conducted a lot of spotlight interviews. Many of you, I think some of you on this call were in those spotlight videos to tell their stories about their involvement in child welfare. Renee, myself, and Crystal Left Pignon with the Texas Indigent Defense Commission have reviewed those interviews, And I think it's fair to say that the hard part of the editing process is going to be deciding what things we have to leave on the cutting room floor, because there's simply so many excellent and powerful statements from people about their experience in child welfare law and what it has meant to them. We have been able to identify sort of 5 major themes that came out of those interviews. The first is the importance of high quality representation and how that really affects the lives of parents and children. The second is sort of what makes the field unique, what makes it stand out from other areas of the law. The second is the third is how people entered the field, what drew them to the field in the first place, and how they became involved in child welfare. The fourth is what keeps them in the field, what makes sure that they continue on their day-to-day basis to continue to want to practice in the area. And then the fifth is sort of how do new people start out? How do new attorneys become engaged in this work? What supports are available to them and how can they become engaged? So now that we've sort of identified those themes, the next step is going to be the staff of TDIC is going to start editing those videos. And we're hopeful to have final versions of those videos in time for the September commission meeting. And then for FY 2024, the focus will really be on making those videos available to law schools and other organizations to raise the profile of child welfare law as a career path for new and young lawyers, or lawyers who are in a different career path and are looking to switch career paths. So that's what we plan to do with that project in FY 2024. The other sort of new focus from the LRC that we want to continue over on into 2024 is enhancing appellate representation. We now have an appellate representation work group under the LRC that just has met 2 times already this fiscal year. We've identified a few projects for FY 2024, one being a webinar to address the transition from the trial attorney to the appellate attorney to make sure that that handoff is smooth and that nothing is, the client's rights are protected in the appellate process. And along with that presentation, the committee also wants to work on developing sort of a one-page, not really a bench card, but more of an attorney card to make sure that attorneys have easy access to the information of all the things they need to do to make sure that handoff is successful. The other the other training project that the work group has come up with is a presentation at Child Welfare Judges Conference to trial attorneys, to trial judges about what they need to know about the appellate process and particularly the handoff from the trial process to the appellate process. The work group has also been collaborating with the appellate law section to help recruit quality attorneys to take CPS appeals and is going to explore scholarships to help child welfare attorneys attend the appellate section's appellate law boot camp. This is a boot camp that the appellate law section holds every September. We probably won't have time to do scholarships this fiscal year, but we're hoping to possibly have scholarships available for the 2024 appellate law boot camp. The other project that I wanted to let people know about that was sort of under LRC, but we've transitioned to the Parent Resource Work Group, but we're going to maintain that project, is developing a parent voice video similar to our youth voice video that we completed last year that helped youth understand the attorney-client relationship and what they could do if they had an issue with their attorney. We'll have a similar project for parents to have them have opportunities to express in their own words what the attorney-client relationship means, but that project will now fall under the Parent Resource Group rather than the LRC. So that's something that we will develop for 2024, but it will fall under Parent Resource Guide rather than the LRC. The next meeting of our Legal Representation Committee will take place on July 14th. The meeting will take stock of all the legislative changes that have been made by the 88th legislative changes session and how they affect our efforts to raise the quality representation. My guess is there will probably be some additional ideas and projects that come out of that meeting, and we'll update those at our September commission meeting. And that's all I have. I'll turn it back over to Jamie.
Thank you, Renee and Dylan. I will open it up on the floor to anybody who has any feedback or thoughts about the new ideas for legal practice and process. Judge Alvarado.
Hello, can you all hear me?
It's a little quiet, but
I'm going to try to speak up the best I can on it.
That's better. Thank you.
One of the things that I think that was interesting that
Judge Alvarado, we have a really hard time hearing you.
How to engage new attorneys. Oh, geez, I'm so sorry.
Can hear you now.
Much better?
Yes.
Better.
Okay. Was what Dylan was talking about was how to engage new. And I think a lot of that has to do also with starting conversations with areas, right? So one of the things that we've done recently here is starting to engage people, we started with the course catalog and find out that there wasn't a child welfare time. So starting to have those discussions, professors that oversee the clinics and the practicum portion of the law school study, and get a child welfare class back at the school, trying to get clinics started up again as a pathway for students to come into this area of law. Because I'm not sure if you all are experiencing this, but what we seem to be seeing is that we have an aging population of ad litem attorneys, but we don't have a younger population that is coming in as a pathway. And so we've started to have those dialogues with the law school. And kind of along the same line, we've even had those dialogues with our local universities from the social work aspect of it to create a practicum path into the department as well. And I've connected the university and the law school together to see if there's any kind of crossover courses that could be implemented as well. So it's in its infancy, but it's something that we're starting from the educational side to create a pathway into this practice of law. And so just to kind of highlight that, I like what you're doing there with the engagement, and I kind of think it falls kind of in line with some of the stuff that we're trying to do here in Bexar County.
Thanks for mentioning that, Judge Alvarado. We are working with another jurisdiction on starting another law school clinic, so happy to support your efforts if we can. And we've brought in UT and SMU to talk about their children's clinics, and we're optimistic that one day we could get a parents clinic as well, or at least a joint clinic. So really excited to hear that that's happening in San Antonio. Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Gearing, I believe you're with Senator West's office, and your hand's up. We'd love to hear from you. Oh, can't hear you though. I'm so sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
There we go. Yeah, so I just wanted to say, Dylan, I think we're definitely going to be giving y'all some work to do in September and figuring out new changes from legislation during the session. But I also wanted to say, I really think something that struck me earlier was the discussion of virtual outreach to children and their families to try and get more similar of that engagement aspect. And I think that is probably a great area to focus on going forward, especially since, it's becoming a much more digital age, and young people like myself are spending a lot of time online and using the internet. So if there are more of those kind of like virtual social media type outreach programs, then I think that we could be able to reach a lot more people and put a lot more people in contact with services that they may or may not know they need specifically.
Great feedback. Thank you. We need to go to them where they are, right? It's really important to not be stuck in one method of communication. So we got to meet youth where they are. Judge Graves Harrington, your hand's up as well.
It is. Thank you. So two things, the child welfare clinic. So I did start a child welfare clinic at Thurgood Marshall in 2019, and we've hit some bumps along the way. So I would really love to have some assistance of the commission in that arena. I can tell you that the students who went through the clinic are actually practicing in the child welfare arena now. So if there's exposure early enough, then to gain their interest, and a lot of people want to do public service and things of that nature, so they feel as if they're giving back in doing this. So I would love your assistance with that. As the second thing is the parent resource topic you all were just discussing about parent resources. I don't know if this is possible, but would it be possible for you all to also focus on some type of resource guide or some type of assistance that you can provide the adoptive parents? Because we're even seeing adoption breakdowns because parents feel like once they have all the support as they're going through, but once the adoption is finalized, they don't feel like there is any support afterwards. So if there could be a resource guide developed, I know Jockey Family, I've used their product before. They do a parent packet. When you do adoptions, they'll provide a backpack for the child and a bag and information for the parents, but that's national that's nationwide information. So maybe something local, or, or just statewide would be more effective. Maybe that's something that you all can consider doing as well.
Can you share the name of that organization again? I don't think I caught it.
It's Jockey.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Jockey.
And I know there's some information from Wendy's Wonderful Kids also, which is the Dave Thomas Foundation, but
Yes.
Point taken, we'll take it back and see if we have the bandwidth for this coming fiscal year, but that may need to go one more year down the line, but it's a great idea and I appreciate you bringing it up. Anybody else have feedback, thoughts, questions about the legal practice and process suggestions? Justice Byrne.
I'm just thrilled about the appellate work that you're doing. Thank you, Dylan, very much. I appreciate it. And Justice Countess too.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, not a meeting goes by at the Children's Commission without us talking about training. So we are going to talk about our training activities for the coming fiscal year, and I'll turn it over to Milbrey and Renee.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Good afternoon, everyone. Renee and I are excited to share our proposed training projects with you, and we look forward to your feedback. The Commission is committed to providing training opportunities to child welfare judges and attorneys at all levels of practice, beginning, intermediate, and advanced. We continue to develop training content and to fill gaps in training by working with our own resources and by collaborating with external partners. And y'all can find examples of trainings from our current fiscal year in the Commission reports. In addition to ongoing signature training events, such as the Child Welfare Judges Conference and the Trial Skills Training, what we want to share with you today are 3 main areas of focus for the next fiscal year, where we can continue to address pressing and ongoing training needs for judges and attorneys. These ideas were generated by Commission staff based on feedback from judges and attorneys in our field, and also from our training committee members. They provide ongoing input throughout the year and also shared some specific ideas at our recent meeting in April. So the 3 main areas are providing judicial and attorney reasonable efforts academies, designing a basic level trial skills training, and expanding the way we deliver online content. So I'll start with the first area, judicial and attorney reasonable efforts academies. We would like to use our Texas adaptation of the National Reasonable Efforts Academy curriculum to improve the knowledge and skills in this critical area of the law for judges and for attorneys, and we want to host them as in-person events. Next week, I'm going to Minnesota to serve as a faculty member for an in-person judicial academy that's going to be hosted by the Minnesota Court Improvement Program. And immersion in that experience will support the Commission's development of our own in-person iterations of Reasonable Efforts Academies. Reasonable Efforts Academies can be delivered virtually and be very successful, but we feel that the curriculum really lends itself to in-person training. Just like trial skills training, Reasonable Efforts Academies have a very strong hands-on component where judges and attorneys practice making reasonable efforts rulings or advocating for their fictional client in 4 different fact patterns that represent different stages of a child welfare case. Renee will helm the Reasonable Efforts Attorney Academy, so I'll hand the microphone over to her now.
Thank you, Milbrey. The Commission feels that it's important to have commensurate training for our judges and attorneys practicing child welfare law so that everyone in the courtroom is thinking about reasonable efforts throughout the various stages of a case. To that end, we do plan to create an Attorney Reasonable Efforts Academy to parallel our Judicial Academy. In preparation for the Attorney Academy, I participated in a virtual Colorado Reasonable Efforts Attorney Academy, which was held in March of this year. This online training was designed to include up to 50 participants and created an opportunity for them to prepare and present arguments from all sides of the case. We plan to modify this training from the National Center for State Courts to fit the Texas statutory scheme for our scenarios and hope to provide this training in person in fiscal year 2024. In addition to the new Attorney Reasonable Efforts Academy, the Commission also plans to roll out a revised trial skills training in the fall of 2024. Data collected from our last 3 rounds of TST applications have indicated a need for both 101 and advanced trainings. Based on feedback from the training committee, our TST faculty members, and prior trial skills training participants, we have determined that there is a more pressing need for a 101 training. We've received several suggestions for training from our training committee on how to best design the 101 curriculum, and these include preparing a case for removal through either a contested adversary or court-ordered services hearing, and providing a rotating 1 to 2 day training on various topics such as laying the evidentiary foundation, pretrial motions, objections practice, and training on how to prepare your client and witnesses for testifying at hearings. The third area of focus for our training team next year will be growing our online content. First, we aspire to grow our current library of on-demand courses by presenting webcasts and webinars on a monthly to bi-monthly basis. Webcast ideas for next year include a discussion of the intersection between federal and state statutes related to child welfare law, and the creation of 101 content aimed to meet the statutory requirements to qualify for initial placement on child welfare appointment lists. Additionally, we anticipate creating brown bag or video short series, which Milbury will now discuss.
Thanks, Renee. We see this brown bag video short series as a way to provide education in small bites. So basically relevant child welfare related information that's easily accessible and digestible to judges and attorneys. Using a shorter format that perhaps is less formal gives us latitude and flexibility to provide education in between our in-person training events and to provide them at all levels of practice. So examples of this kind of training that were favored by training committee members include a training on how to work with the Bureau of Vital Statistics to obtain a child's birth certificate in a case where one doesn't exist. Also, we talked with the training committee members about presenting an overview of the department. This would be a very high-level presentation on the structure of the state agency, who's who at the department, what resources the department has, and reviewing acronyms that are associated with the department. And the third thing that we talked about with the training committee was sharing strategies for attorney and judicial well-being to support judges and attorneys in their daily work with children and families. We welcome any other ideas that you all might have about possible training topics. And that concludes our training committee report. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Milbury and Renee. So what feedback do you have for us about these ideas of video shorts, reasonable efforts, academies, and one other thing, sorry. PST 101, of course. Got a thumbs up from Dr. Blau. What do you all think about these training ideas for the coming fiscal year? Have we hit the mark? Are we moving in the right direction? Other ideas that we haven't discussed?
One that I'd like to toss out, Jamie, this is Darlene. I know that Dylan's doing a lot in the appellate arena and along with Justice Countess. But one thing is how to write and when to write an Anders brief would be especially in light of potential allegations of ineffective assistance of counsel. I think that that is an issue that could be beneficial to lawyers on behalf of these children and families.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
I agree with that. That's something that the court, we continued to kind of have a group that's dealing with that, but then it seems like we keep hitting roadblocks and it never does go anywhere. And it's something that I think probably we need to address through the commission because like I say, it seems like there's so many roadblocks that keep coming up and then it makes everything just stagnate. So I think that's a very good idea, Justice Byrne.
Do you all think an effective method of delivery for that could be virtual, that we could do it as a webinar, or does that need to be an in-person training?
I don't know. It's more than training. I think we need to really look at exactly, how that should be handled because I don't think it's settled at all. And there's a lot of issues that need to be dealt with, I think. So I'm thinking more in terms of a committee to look at the different issues involved and try to kind of like we're doing with the standards. I don't mean going into that kind of in depth, but something like that I think needs to be done.
Justice Lerman, can I ask a clarification question? Do you mean kind of looking into when it is appropriate to file an Anders brief? Is that?
Yeah, all of that. Yes. Mm-hmm. Because I think lawyers are very confused about it. I think everybody's confused about it, quite frankly.
I would suggest in addition, Justice Lehrman, and thank you for your comments. I envision this more like, in essence, a writing seminar where, and also maybe like a simulation where you actually have a record that the participants have to go through, analyze the record, and then discuss whether or not this is the type of case in which an Anders brief would be appropriate, talk about the issues related to their licensure and the concerns that they may have about receiving a grievance or receiving an ineffective assistance of counsel referral, and how to deal with that push-pull in this arena. I think it's more of a kind of a day-long writing plus training where a record is sent out, that's a part of your review prior to coming to the training. Just a thought. And then maybe we kill our opportunity to recruit appellate attorneys because they run screaming into the woods, pulling their hair out. I don't know, but I do think it would be a beneficial tool of training for them in light of all the issues at stake.
Justice Byrne, one idea that comes to mind in response to your suggestion is maybe seeking collaboration with the appellate law section to see if a scenario like that could possibly be combined into their boot camp. So if they're willing to have attorneys who specialize in CPS come to their boot camp, maybe a fact pattern like what you just said could be a part of that.
That would be wonderful.
I also am recalling, and maybe Dylan can help me remember this, that a few years ago, there was a workshop that another national group put on, maybe a defense attorney group. I don't remember, but if we find something that's on point, we might think about scholarships to be able to send appellate attorneys to that particular workshop.
I do remember that, Milbury. Unfortunately, I also do not remember what it was called, but I do remember the thing that you are referencing.
I'll find it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for sharing a little bit more detail about that vision, Chief Justice Byrne, and we will certainly take it back to the appellate work group and also to the training committee and see what we can do in that regard. And Justice Lehrman, I appreciate your insights, and we'll definitely lean heavily on you and Justice Huddle about the need, because as you all know, we've primarily focused on trial practice, and appellate practice is newer to us, but we know it's an important area for us to address at the Children's Commission, and appreciate everybody's leadership in identifying what those things are so we can bring together the experts to make forward progress. So thank you very much. Let's move on now to the last committee, which is data, and I will turn it over to Dylan.
Thank you, Jamie. I want to update people on a few data projects that are sort of on hold, but we're hoping to sort of jumpstart those in 2024 and get them back up and running. The data committee did meet on May 5th to sort of review the state of several data committee projects. And one of the projects that's sort of been on hold is our study regarding the PMC courts in the Dallas and Houston area. We've been trying to sort of come up with a study to quantify the work that we know those courts are doing. And the work group determined that to really effectively get some causal evidence regarding the effectiveness of these courts, an evaluation would really have to compare children whose cases were placed in PMC courts upon entry versus children whose cases were placed in non-specialized PMC courts. And to be able to really measure both permanency outcomes regarding these children as well as well-being indicators. And to measure those well-being indicators, they would need access to the children themselves to be able to interview them about their experience. So the work group submitted a formal request for access and data to DFPS through their new research and data request portal. They submitted follow-up information. DFPS had a few questions regarding that proposal, and the work group has followed up with those questions and submitted additional information. Unfortunately, DFPS has not yet made a final decision about that proposal. And so we are sort of on hold with next steps until DFPS makes that decision. But we're hopeful that that request will be approved, and we're hopeful to be able to really start work on that more expansive study in FY 2024 so we can capture the work that the PMC courts are doing. The other project that's been on pause is our project to see if the data systems of the court, child protection court management system and the DFPS impact system can be successfully integrated, that they can share data amongst each other. And so where we have been is that DFPS and OCA staff met to discuss a proposed data use agreement that would allow a sample data set to be shared between the Office of Court Administration and DFPS. Unfortunately, when we had that work group meeting, it was determined that there were sort of some significant security and technical issues regarding that data use agreement that were a barrier to sharing that data set. It was insightful to me to learn exactly the limits of my own technical and data expertise, because I definitely do not have an understanding of what those barriers were, but they are significant. That doesn't mean they can't be overcome, but it means that it may take a while to iron those out. So in the meantime, OCA has been setting up a panel of presiding judges to work with the judges on our work group to think through some of the legal issues that might be a barrier to that data integration. Issues like possible ex parte communication with a judge if data is uploaded to a court system before other parties get notice of it. We haven't successfully set up that meeting yet. I think there's been a little bit of pause while the OCA has been attention has been focused on the legislative session. So we're hopeful to get that work group up and running, as well as continue to try to tackle the meat of the technical problems that prevent the data set from being shared. So we're hopeful that that work is going to continue forward in 2024, and hopefully we'll get a determination of whether or not we can, in fact, successfully integrate those two data systems. For FY 2024, the data committee wanted to develop some new strategies regarding reviewing the Child and Family Service review data that was mentioned earlier. This is the federal data and the federal review process. And the idea is that the data committee will sort of be the first point of contact to help DFPS and the community understand more about what the data might be telling us, as well as how that data can be used for judges to evaluate their own court practice. So it's sort of a twofold exchange of data, that the judges will be able to help put some context regarding the data that we do know, as well as using the data to see what judges can do in their own courts to improve court practice. The other difference for FY 2024 is data committee wants to work with DFPS to better understand how to use their online data portal. It's a great source of data, but it's something that's I think judges lack a little bit of familiarity with. So the idea is that the judges can kind of go over that data portal with DFPS, really get a better understanding of how to use it, what data is there. And the idea is that will both help judges be able to use the portal, but also spur ideas about, if this data is available, what other data do we need? What other data could be used? Is there other questions or other information that we could draw out from this data that's not currently available on the portal? So that's one of the other plans we have in FY 2024, is to flesh out and develop that tool to really help judges understand how to maximize the use of what data is available. And I think that's all I have for the data committee. So I'll turn it back over to Jamie.
Thanks, Dylan. What do you all think of those activities for next year? Any thoughts or feedback? Are we focusing on the right things? Anything we haven't considered for data projects? I'm hoping that was an appropriate pause. I will say, with regards to this committee and all of the committees, the door is very much open for your feedback at any time. Please contact me or any of the attorneys on the team about things we talked about, things we didn't talk about. It's really important to us that we make the best use of our time and resources and our opportunity here to strengthen the judicial response in child welfare cases. So please don't be shy about contacting us with your ideas. And I will turn it back to Justice Lerman if there's anything else. Oh, I'm sorry, Justice Huddle.
Thanks, Jamie. Before we move on to the next item on the agenda, I will say, number one, thank you, and to all of the staff and all of the committees for working hard to think strategically about how we ought to be spending our time and other resources next year. I want to invite everyone on the phone to continue. You know, it usually happens that I remember something or I have a great idea the minute after I end a phone call or walk out of the room. And so if you have a great idea or feedback for the staff, after this meeting, please share it. We'd love to hear from you. And so the next thing we're going to do is take something out of order. Normally we wait till the end of our agenda to hear from our collaborative council. We're going to move that up a little bit in today's agenda. We have no written reports from the collaborative council, but we do have an update from Barbara Elias Percival for Texas Lawyers for Children. So, Barbara, if you are on the phone, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And thank you for taking me out of order. I really appreciate your flexibility. I just want to let you all know about an important training we're going to be having. And as many of you know, our organization received a grant from the governor's office in 2018 to create a legal professional trauma training program. It's a 15-hour program, and we've done it by live webinar, and now it's online 24/7. So it can help attorneys meet their new requirement to have training on trauma. But what we're going to do next is start a series on specialized topics regarding trauma that will give attorneys an even greater understanding of what traumatized children need and what they need to go to court and ask for, and give judges more information about options for healing traumatized children. So I'm very excited that on September 28th, and I'm wanting to tell you now, so hopefully judges, you can save room on your dockets to attend this and to let your attorneys attend this. We're going to do a 2.5 webinar from 2:30 to 5 on the issue, on the treatment modality called EMDR. And that stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And it's been shown to be extremely effective in treating trauma in both adults and children. There are a lot of research studies proving it to be highly effective, and war veterans have experienced EMDR and had very good results. And so have children in the child protection system. It's been studied in both groups. And so I just want to, it's such a weird, unusual form of treatment that I just wanted to take a minute to explain what goes on with it. It's the therapy where the therapist may move the finger, his or her finger back and forth from left to right, or do some other bilateral movement from right to left. And what's going on with the right and left motion is that the therapy is switching from left brain, where the logic is, to the right brain, where emotions are governed in the brain, and to the more primitive parts of the brain that govern emotions. And so the reason why it's so effective with traumatized children is that whereas, and it has actually been scientifically proven to be more effective than talk therapy on trauma victims, is that in talk therapy, the client is being given coping skills, maybe to deal perhaps with fear or anxiety and be able to manage it. But with EMDR, going into the emotional system of the brain, the child or adult is actually reprocessing and changing the feelings of fear and anxiety. So whereas rather than just managing the fear goes away and there is no longer as high a level of fear. And so what happens is that traumatized children can now, instead of sitting in class being afraid that something bad is going to happen, actually relax and learn. They can sleep better. They can trust and have relationships more. All the kinds of results we want to see for children in the child welfare system can begin to happen. And it's also a pretty short process, where talk therapy can take years and years in a matter of months. People, like in 2 months, EMDR therapists begin to see concrete practical results. So I just hope you will tune in on September 28th, 2:30 to 5. Our trainers are two of the nationally known and most expert therapists on EMDR, Dr. Deborah Korn from Massachusetts and Anna Gomez from Arizona. There will also be an adult who went through EMDR therapy, Michael Baldwin, participating, And there will be video clips showing Deborah Korn in action doing the therapy. So just wanted you to know about that. Thanks for the time to share.
Jamie, may I just thank you so much, Barbara. On behalf of providers, we're always looking for best and innovative practices to work with children and youth. So I'd love to get information about that and be able to invite others.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Katie, I'd be happy to connect y'all if you're not already connected.
So, Jamie, if I might, I want to invite next on the agenda, Ms. Bañuelos, Erica Bañuelos, and Ms. Sasha Roscoe to provide any agency update.
Erica, you go first and I'll take whatever time is. You have more things.
You might have to stop me, Sasha. But yes, good morning, everyone. Well, it's already after lunch. I think I'm done morning. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Erica Bañuelos. I'm the CPS Associate Commissioner, and I just wanted to give you some, so we are about 4 months from finishing our fiscal year. And so I just kind of wanted to update you and give you a current status on the two big programs that are under my division. The first being family-based safety services. So I know that many at the Judiciary Conference had really talked about the caseloads dropping and us having some concerns around what families weren't being captured. And at that time I said, we're evaluating, we're going to go back and implement some changes. And so we have, as of October of 2022, we did send out further direction to the field, and really it pertained to two pieces. One was engaging families, continuing to try to engage families who are saying, no, I'm not interested in family-based safety services, and really doing some extra things to see if we can get them to work with us. And then second, we also really looked at those families that we were closing out with. They were already referred over to community resources. We wanted to make sure that we were verifying not only what community resources that they had been referred to, but were they attending? Were there any additional resources that we could identify through our interaction with them, so the family could be more supported? So as a result, what we have really seen is a pretty, we've increased our stages by about 44% since doing that. So our caseloads in FBSS are definitely trending up. Our average daily caseload last year in March was at 4.8. It's currently at 7.5. And we do expect that to continue to increase as we continue to look at this new practice. And we will stop and evaluate just like we did the last one and see if we need to do any adjustments, but we are definitely seeing more families being worked through family-based safety services. For conservatorship, so we continue to see that we did see an increase in removals, probably the highest increase that we've seen in almost 2 years, and that really has to do with there has been an uptick in investigations that are coming in. So, but we are seeing more exits of our children in foster care, which is always good. Our positive permanency rate is pretty high. So that's always good when we're exiting more children than we're actually removing. So we have been able to see a reduction in children in foster care. And so we continue to be a little under 20,000 kids. And for the PMC class, we saw a decline. They're a little bit over 8,000. So so that it really is we continue to see it trending down. And again, that's a good thing. So on the CVS part, what we do continue to see is our turnover continues to increase. So I'm sure some of you in court are probably feeling some of that because our turnover continues to be about 35%. So it is high, but the caseloads have remained at an average of about 10.8 cases for staff. So that is good. Now the 10.8 average is really for workers that have the 1 PMC child and have the target of 14 to 17. But overall, our workloads continue to be pretty manageable despite our turnover. The other thing that we really are looking at is not just the turnover, but the actual workers that are carrying cases. That's really important in the work that we do every day. So these are the workers that are not in training, as they can't get full caseloads until about 6 months. So we continue to track the case carrying rate to ensure that we have enough caseworkers actually taking cases. So the other thing on the CVS side is, we continue to have a lot of different focuses on kinship care. That continues to be one of our main priorities for children. And so as we look at how many kids we currently have placed with kinship caregivers, we continue for the month of March. We had approximately 6,573 kids that were placed with either verified or unverified kinship care. I'm sorry, the 6,573, those are unverified kinship caregivers. So that means they haven't gone through the permanency care assistant. And we currently have 959 kinship placements that are actually verified. So we continue to work diligently. We continue to strategize on how we can not just increase the number of placements that we have with relatives, but how can we support them? What measures can we take upstream to make sure that when they're having a hard time with a child, that they're able to reach out to us, that they're able to reach out to community resources, that they're able to reach out to the mental health services that they need in order to be able to continue the placement that they currently have in their home. So we are looking at launching out an FGC that's just going to be, which is Family Group Conference, that's going to be just focused on kinship caregivers. So the Family Group Conference will not be to talk about, we have a separate one that talks about permanency, that talks about the family service plan. We are really looking at implementing a process for FGC that is just for kinship and those supports that they need in order to make it successful. So the conversation will really be about bringing anybody that's important to the child, relatives that are important to the relative that's being a caregiver, and really determining what roles. Maybe they can't be a placement, but maybe they're the person that can help grandma get them to school or get them to therapy, or, really coming with a good solid plan on what we can do to support that kinship caregiver. So we're really excited about implementing that and really looking at to see, what kind of successes we can have. And again, we know that the best placement is with relatives. And so we really, really want to make sure that they have all the needed supports. And so, we continue to trend up in terms of our number of placements with kinship. And so as the fiscal year comes to an end, and at the end of August, we are hoping to exceed our kinship rate from last year. So lots going on with us. And so those are the primary things that you are probably seeing right now is, there might be a number of more removals coming to your courts. Again, you might be seeing some less experienced caseworkers in your court because of our turnover. But despite all that, when I look at our metrics, they are trending in the right way. I think the one thing that is probably of most interest to the audience that we have today is our time to permanency. And that is because we have seen about a 2-month average increase in our time to permanency. And I believe we're over 22 months which is probably the highest that we've seen in a while. And so really looking at children that have been in the TMC status for more than 18 months, we're really trying to drill down on those and trying to really figure out what can we do to get this child to permanency. And so, there's a multitude of people that play a role in that permanency time being extended out. So, you might get some questions from, the staff, or they might need something, to really kind of determine what are our next steps. But right now, that is one of our biggest focus, is reducing our time to permanency, because we know that the longer that kids are in care, the harder it is to reach some type of positive permanency for them. So the more we can implement some strategies up front, the more we can partner with the courts, with CASA, with the ad litem, with the parents, who are the most important piece of this equation, right? Our parents, and the least time they have to spend in foster care, we do believe that we will achieve even better outcomes for kids that are currently in our care.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. So do you all have anything else?
Do you want me, Judge Lerman, do you want me to go? But I see a couple of people's hands up for Erica. So I wanted to make sure you didn't want us to stop and take those questions before I start.
Yeah, let's stop and see if anyone has any questions.
Chief Justice.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I thank you, Erica, for that report. I really appreciate it. Is there any hypothesis that's been developed about what is causing the hemorrhaging of our employees? Because I'm not on the trial court bench anymore, but I can tell you one of the most frustrating things, and probably one of the signs of when a case is going to go long, is if I'm now on the 4th, 5th, or 6th caseworker. And so I know that in the past we had really high turnover. We eventually got it down to about 17% at one point. And I was just, is it money? Is it burnout? Is it, is it lack of resources? Any thoughts in that regard?
So it's a combination of different things. I will tell you that Commissioner Muth has and Jennifer as well have brought somebody in to really look at our turnover and retention and really figure out, what are some additional steps that we can do in addition to what we're currently doing. So I think, like anyone, it's been really, really hard to hire people to come and work for us. Looking at some numbers recently, and out of over 1,000 employees that we tried to get to come and interview, there was only like 300 that came, and then it kind of dwindles down every month. And one, I will say, as we all know, as you said on the bench, it's really difficult work to do. That's just, it was already difficult to get caseworkers to come and work for us, or to get people to come work for us, because of just, in general, the type of work that we do requires a lot of time. It requires, it requires you to take care of yourself, and sometimes they can't because they're out there doing removals and they're out there trying to do reunification. It also is a job that, with time, we really have seen, with Child Watch, that brings on a whole different type of work that they have to do. And so one of the things that we did see was, in addition to the pandemic, in addition to really, it has become more difficult to hire individuals. And then we have, of course, children without placement. And I'll tell you that one of the things that it's really getting hard is there's so many jobs that people can do virtually nowadays. And we can't compete with that, because our job requires us to be out in the field, working with families, out in the facilities, visiting with our kids, transporting our kids, from wherever we have to transport them. And we're competing with a market that really is, a lot of it is virtual nowadays. And this is just a human to human job. And therefore they have to, we try to give them as much flexibility as we can, but there's nothing that we're ever going to be able to say, you don't have to go and visit a child. You don't have to go to a home. And I think that even sort of elevates the hiring process, it makes it even more difficult. So I think it's a combination of many things. You know, for those employees that are here, I know that the regional directors have several initiatives that are going on to try to retain their staff. And then the other piece is accountability too. The work that we do is so important and vital. And I always say, like, we want to work with employees. We want to retain employees. It cannot be at expense of a child, right? Never. So that, you know, this is hard work, and that plays into that sometimes. So I would say that it's just a combination of a lot of different things, but we do have some efforts that are going on, not just at the regional level, but also at the state office level. And we definitely know that our turnover doesn't just impact us at the court, but it impacts us in terms of continuity with families. So we're really working hard to try to get back to that low turnover that we once had, which was 17 or 19%.
You know, at one time in the past, when we did get it down to, you know, I think we were one of the best agencies to work for at the state at one point, with regard to employee retention, anyway, that issue. And what I vividly remember that I thought was really charming and amazing, I know I can't pay my staff nearly what they are due as state employees. I wish I could pay them more. They're worth a whole lot more. But I remember one of our commissioners would do ride-alongs and video with the front staff, and did videos and those types of things. And I remember going to speak at numerous graduation and awards ceremonies, probably on a monthly basis, where you celebrated the employee of the month, and you brought in all these, you made a big to-do out of it, all these dignitaries. And I don't know whether y'all do that anymore. I haven't been invited to one in several years, but back in the day, you know, when you can't pay them what they're worth, and you never will be able to pay them what they're worth, little thank yous and certificates and those types of things, it just seems to help boost morale. And y'all probably do that already, but I just know that back in my time when I was doing it, that meant a whole lot.
Yeah, and I see that I think it's Commissioner, because there's a couple of Stephanie Mutes on here, but I think she raised up her hand, because I know that Commissioner Mute, it has really taken some good steps towards what you're speaking about. So I'll let her speak.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. Yes, I was just going to chime in. I think that's really a priority. Also, just focusing on workplace wellness for our staff. They are often on the front line to experience trauma, and there's secondary trauma associated with that. I don't think we've done a very good job of really helping them with the work-life balance and the self-care that they need as they're doing those jobs. So as Erica mentioned, we have an entire strike force that's sort of focused on how do we help improve the employee experience from the moment that they file an application for their job. So onboarding, training, and then when they go out into the field, how to support them better through that process. I always think pay is a part of it, but one of the things that is both a blessing and a curse is the curse part is how difficult the job that we're asking our staff to do. But the blessing is that we're attracting people who are committed to the work that we do and have a passion for it. So it's also just helping so they don't get burned out and supporting them through that process. So I agree with Erica. I don't think there's one solution, one magic bullet, but we're looking at a number of different things from videos to staff. I'll be out there once session is over. I'll be out there. I've done one ride along, but I've got lots more to do. I'm planning this summer to be out in the field a lot. So it's certainly an area that I think we can continue to improve on.
One of the things that NCJ, FCJ has done and implemented regularly that I think is something that the judges around the nation look forward to is we have a Wellness Monday every Monday, and it's a national video with a yoga instructor and mindfulness. I don't know that it's an hour out of your week, and every Monday, if you want to plug in and have a wellness meeting with your coworkers, it's really been nice for the NCJ, FCJ judges.
Yeah, that is a great idea.
That is. Thank you. Dylan, did you have something?
Yes, I just had a quick technical question along the same subject. Did that turnover rate for CVS workers, does that include CVS workers in community-based care regions or just the legacy system?
Thank you. That's a great question. So that's the turnover on the legacy side.
Okay. Is there data available regarding CBC regions, regarding CVS worker turnover?
We work closely with them to get that data, but we don't have access to their turnover. But we do, if we have to obtain it or look at it, and it's something that we do talk about whenever we have meetings with them, we are able to look at that.
Thank you.
Judge Graves Harrington, I think you had something.
Yes, very quickly, just really quickly piggybacking off of Chief Justice Burns in just showing appreciation for the workers, the case workers. It is very hard work, and we have a collaborative environment here in this court, and sometimes we identify caseworkers that are extraordinary, and we'll tell other caseworkers, meet with this person, they were just amazing. And so now we have caseworkers who just, they ask at the end of the day, was it satisfactory? We really want to make an impression on the court. And so they aim to do a great job because they know that the courts appreciate them as well. And so to know that they're a vital part of the whole process and for us to verbalize that. So it's great to come from the courts, and it will be wonderful to come from their employers as well, to know how much they are appreciated in a more formal manner where they are recognized, in front of their coworkers. But secondly, I wanted to talk about the increase or the uptick in the positive permanency rates, which I think is absolutely amazing. But I wanted to know, how do non-suits play into the formula? How are you all considering or tracking non-suits, and are they considered positive permanency, or is there another area avenue that you would put them? Column that entering?
Yeah, that is a great question that I do not have. It would be dangerous to answer that question for you, but I can certainly get the answer and give it over to Jamie so that she can share with you.
Okay. And I only ask that because I'm noticing an uptick in non-suits now recently, and they're not ministerial, which it seems to be the belief of some of the caseworkers, that they come in and they ask for the non-suit and it's automatic, and that's just not the case. And so the court has to grant the non-suit.
Right.
And so I'm just seeing an uptick. And so I'm wondering if it's a culture or belief amongst the department now that kind of lands in the positive permanency.
So thank you for bringing that up, and we can certainly look into that and see, has there been an uptick in the non-suits, and where in particular? Is there a certain place where we're seeing them happen more than others? And then your question about how does it fit into positive permanency? So thank you for bringing it up, and we can definitely look into that. And sometimes it's good for you all to bring things to us because we might think we're just never going to see it all. So I do appreciate your feedback, and we can definitely follow up on that. And thank you for the recognition that you do for the staff. I know that the staff work very closely with the courts, and when they are recognized from the bench, it means so much to them. So I really appreciate the time that you've taken to do that.
For sure. Thank you, Erica.
So thank you all very much. That was very helpful, very, very helpful. Okay, so Sasha Roscoe, do you? Are you ready?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm the Chief Prevention and Community Wellbeing Officer at DFPS for those of you who don't know me. So I work alongside Erica, but a little bit upstream. And I have a few things to share. In the Prevention and Early Intervention Division, if you hadn't heard, there is a Senate bill that would rename and move that division from DFPS to the HHSC. So that's sort of a big legislative development for us. And it's still obviously that we're just waiting for the legislature to make their final decisions. It hasn't been heard on the House floor. So that has been a big potential shift for DFPS to shift that prevention work over to its sister agency. And likewise, with any potential funding for prevention and early intervention programs, we did request expansion of those programs, and we're still waiting. So those are just two big items that we don't have really any news updates around, but did want to, because the next time you might meet, there might be some big changes in that arena. Speaking of sort of promotion for our staff, we did, all of us, I think collectively just finished Child Abuse Prevention Month, and the Faith-Based and Community Engagement Division that is also under my supervision. Did a lot of work along with our prevention and early intervention partners. And I know all of you all to recognize the importance of the work that we do along the full continuum of child abuse, neglect prevention and tertiary prevention. And that is a big boost to our staff. So I did want to just mention it both in terms of time and in terms of it's an opportunity where I think we do recognize the work of everyone protecting children and supporting families. So there was a lot of activity there, and we had a ceremony at the Capitol, and I'm sure you all had something in your communities too. The Texas Family First pilots, I did want to give a quick update, again, sort of across section with the legislature, and that we are expecting to continue funding those, although, you know, the rider that put them in, the rider and the bill that put them in place, or at least the funding, was only through this fiscal year, but we still have that federal funding left, and we are expecting to continue those pilots. We're just waiting for the legislature to kind of finalize and give us any changes, any nuance changes in direction there. But the University of Texas Medical Branch that is doing the required third-party evaluation is, I don't know if they've reached out to anyone working on those pilots yet, but they are making calls and interviewing everyone, I think, from family participants and department staff and judicial staff and you all to get a sense of how those pilots have been working so far and what we might change. We'll take all that into account as we set up services to support whatever direction we take in the new fiscal year, or any possible expansion of those pilots, both within the existing communities or perhaps new communities. And then finally, I wanted to mention the kinship. We have PEI in partnership with CPS is using CAPTA funds to fund some kinship navigation pilots in a few communities around the state. We are also evaluating those navigation pilots, and I'm hopeful that our research partners, which are also the University of Texas Medical Branch, are feeling pretty confident we might be able to establish evidence base and submit that navigation curriculum or structure framework to the FFPSA clearinghouse for potential, so it can potentially draw down future FFPSA work. And there's some really, really moving stories coming from our kinship families about the kinds of support they're getting through those navigators. And just as a reminder, what this is the first time the agency's been able to fund efforts to not just support our kinship providers engaged in our formal child protective system, but also kinship providers in the community without child welfare involvement, but that are doing the job we want them to do, which is sort of keeping children in families without even the need for involvement or investigation or court oversight. And so it's the first time we've been able to support this broader continuum of the grandparents and siblings and aunts and uncles all out there raising families and their very particular needs and in reaching out for services. And as you can imagine, a lot of what those kinship providers are asking for, particularly those out in the in the community that aren't really involved in CPS and sort of stepped into that role on their own within their family is a lot of legal support. So a lot of that navigation has been matching families out there, sort of trying to make it work without the need for CPS involvement, but still not sure how to establish guardianship or custody or figure out how to enroll their children in school or access services, all of things that we want to avoid triggering a need for more intensive involvement if possible. So it's been a really interesting, an exciting space that it's really been a partnership, I think, obviously with Alliance and community-based partners. The navigation is happening within our PEI Family and Youth Success Grants. So it's been an add-on that which used to be known as the STAR program. So it's been a partnership with our PEI providers and a lot of our community-based partners that are members of the Alliance. And that was the update I had, unless anyone had any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
Justice Flaherty, I have a question for Sasha.
Yes.
Thanks. Regarding the Parent Navigator program, Sasha, do you see that the evidence coming out of that is only applicable to prevention and the way it's set up, or is it also have some application to our families that are in CPS as well?
I mean, I'd have to go back and ask. I didn't receive that kind of nuanced feedback, but the impression I get is that it's both, it's been helpful to both groups, but it is obviously a different set of services that those two groups might be seeking, since they're the kinship providers and are already engaged with us have access to supports or at least systems. But I'll find out and let you know.
And this is different than, say, a Parent Navigator for a parent who is experiencing CPS themselves, not the bio family, the family of origin.
That's right. I mean, this is very much informed by and sort of by the kinship providers themselves. It's a lot of engagement from them and their lived experience about the uniqueness of taking care of a child that isn't yours, and whether it's generational differences or just figuring out how to get a kid in school. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Miss Beddington.
Hi, I'm Chantel Bedlington, and just wanted to speak a little bit. I am actually get the opportunity to manage one of those pilot programs, one of those programs in the DFW area.
Oh, wonderful.
And so just wanted to speak a little bit to that. We are serving informal and formal, and I think I'm going to get the opportunity to share a little bit more about the work that we're doing, and hopefully maybe the next time that we meet. But it was really interesting. I don't know if you've had the chance to look at any of the clearinghouse manuals that have been submitted, but as you dig through them, Texas has been very unique in that we are one of the only states really focusing on not just formal kinship care, but those informal families. Which is absolutely fabulous. It is the majority of the families that we are seeing that are seeking help because they haven't had a caseworker, and so they really are in the dark. And so I love that Texas has taken that unique approach. We're very similar to some other programs, other states like Arizona, but very unique in that regard.
Thank you so much for that. We appreciate that. And Judge Graves Harrington.
Okay, I'm a chatterbox today. I'm sorry. I have lots of questions. So are these families that are like in FBSS, or they've been identified by the department, or is there another referral? How are these families connected with these services?
So I think it's probably an all of the above answer, and it really depends on each community provider. And maybe Chantel, you can speak to this too about what you're doing. But our prevention providers that are funded by PEI are used to, voluntarily engaging families in the broader community, and so that, which is really half of the job, right? When how do families know about you? How do they get to you? So their referral sources tend to be a wide variety of the schools or faith partners, other service sector partners, and sometimes the juvenile courts. I mean, because they're sort of getting families struggling from a variety of spaces, and child protective services. So I think it's an all of the above, but maybe Chantel can speak to more, like some more case examples of how families that are out there in the community without a CPS case find out about and access the navigation program.
Okay, and I only ask because as a district court judge, I also see family cases, non-child welfare cases, in which I myself identify something is going to happen down the road if someone doesn't assist in some way. And so, you know, that's why I'm asking about a referral service, referral process, or how it actually works, but I'll listen to
Well, yeah, and let me just say that would be true for any of our PEI programs, whether we have a lot of programs for families of very young children, and we would agree, like there's, substance use cases, eviction, there's so many cases where our prevention provider could step in and help with parenting. And the easiest way to find those, in addition to the kinship navigation programs just being a subset, is on our we have a getparentingtips.org website that is really run by us, but it has a search mechanism by zip code and or by county to find all of the different prevention programs funded by DFPS. And then just, it's not a great closed loop kind of referral system. You still have to like call whoever or email someone. It's a little clunky, but we're hoping to get there at some point. But Chantel, I'll stop talking now and let you talk about the kinship navigation grant and how families are finding you.
No, you're fine. And I don't want to, share too much twice in a row because I know I'm doing a little bit more of this again. But I think some of the things you're saying are true, and we know, I know there's a lot of fear with kinship, how do we make sure this cycle isn't repeating itself? Well, Kinship Navigator program is how we make sure of that, because without those families, having that extra support, that extra help, that's very, very possible. But when we can come alongside the families, we are doing a ton of work to, mitigate that and keep that from happening. And so they're finding out about us from a variety of different ways. So yes, we are working with FBSF families, FBSS families. We are working with some formal families that are working with CPS, but then also just those very, very informal families that we're getting from the schools, from our faith communities, a lot of work in, from the hospitals, just a lot of work in outreach and awareness in this very new program has been a lot of that. But because it is tied to our phase programs, they are so well known in our communities, and that's been quite helpful.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So anything else? So I think Justice Huddle, we ready to continue?
Yes, thank you, Justice Lehrman, and to Eric and Sasha for those good updates. Next, I want to invite Jeffrey Sukanawa at OCA to give an Office of Court Administration update.
Thank you, Justice Huddle and Justice Lehrman. My name is Jeffrey Sukanawa. I'm the Director of Research and Court Services with OCA. I'm standing in for Megan Lavoie, who could not be here because it is legislative session and she is being pulled every which way possible. But she did send her hello and thanks for all the work that the Commission does. Before I start, I wanted to tell the Commission something that you all know, and that's that the Commission has a really great set of staff that works for the Children's Commission. I have the pleasure of working with several members of the Children's Commission on a regular basis, and oftentimes those meetings are the highlight of my day. Jamie and her team are just some of the strongest and most dedicated individuals to the work that they do that I've worked with in my 20 plus years working in courts. And they're a really great group of people. And it's a privilege and an honor to work with them and with the Commission. So something that you already know, but I think sometimes it just needs to be said.
Here. That's a great lead in. Here.
Yes, thank you.
We want to give a few updates. First, we wanted to start with a few personnel updates that are relevant to the Commission. In the last few years, we've seen several of our child protection and child support judges come and go. And fortunately, most of our child protection judges have been relatively stable. But Judge James Belton from the Brownsville area retired April 30th. Fortunately, he won't be going far. He'll be sitting by assignment. And Judge Missy Maderi has appointed Marie Cortez as the new judge for the Cameron County area. She's winding down her private law practice, and I think she is scheduled to begin June 1st. So we look forward to welcoming Judge Cortez, or soon to be Judge Cortez, as one of our new child protection judges. Marnita Davis was one of our early intervention court liaison individuals. That is through a project through the commission and the department, in which we identified 3 areas of the state to hire these early intervention court liaisons. Marnita was working up with Judge Cornish and Judge Sims in the Belton area. Her last day was May 3rd. She worked a great year with us trying to implement this new pilot in that area, and we'll be working with the department and the Children's Commission to have that position filled so that there's not a gap in the services we provide in that area. And then lastly, someone who's I've seen active with the Q&A, Jeffrey Cox. Jeff was hired through a grant that the commission granted to OCA as a data analyst that has been working quite a bit with our CPCMS data and our child protection courts. He was a large part of the authoring of the recent report that was published on the impact of COVID-19 on child abuse and neglect cases. Jeffrey's last day with OCA and with the commission is May 31st. We're really appreciative of all the work that Jeff has done for OCA, for our courts and the commission. We're really thankful for that opportunity to use that grant funds for that position. Lastly, we just wanted to highlight a few bills that would be relevant to the commission, just to demonstrate the amount of time that session takes for us. Out of the 8,500 bills that were filed this year, OCA was assigned over 1,700 to do fiscal notes on. So that's well over 20% of all the bills that were filed. So it's been a very, very busy session for all the OCA staff working on bills relevant to our courts. We're in the home stretch, as you all know, but I know as these last minute hearings get scheduled, a lot could change. So a few bills and sort of their status that are relevant. HB 1 and Senate Bill 1 both included funding for OCA for case level data. And this is probably something that you've heard a lot about or a little about, but case level data will be the ability for us to collect literally data about every case down to the ground level. Currently, we collect aggregate data from the county level, so we're not able to provide as much insight into the judiciary as we'd like. Case level data will be probably the most, not life-changing, but it'll be one of the largest projects we've ever taken on. For some of us, it could be life-changing the amount of work it will take. So we've received funding through both the House and the Senate on that. We're hopeful when session ends, we're able to keep all that money. And that data, once we're able to collect it, will be significant for policymakers reviewing the courts. And that will be a multi-year project. We anticipate sort of a rollout of how that occurs, but as soon as session ends and we're able to identify what our legislative directive is, we'll be holding a kickoff meeting and deciding on data governance and all those relevant topics. House Bill 3186 is known as the Texas Youth Diversion Act. That was recently passed out of the House and is set to be heard by the Senate this coming Tuesday. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it'll allow judges to divert youth facing Class C misdemeanors to different programs or interventions so that they don't have to have a guilty finding against them. So as it stands now, for youth, Class C misdemeanors are treated the same as adults. So that's a pretty significant bill that we're following. And again, that's set to be heard by the Senate on Tuesday. Senate Bill 728, that is a bill that will require clerks to report dispositions related to mental health findings to the DPS for mixed background checks. That's in particular, that's For an example, if a child's found to be unfit to proceed in a proceeding as a result of mental illness. So there's been a lot of focus on NICS reporting in the last couple of years, particularly when it comes to juveniles. I know the legislature's been working really hard to make improvements in that area, particularly when it comes to gun safety. Senate Bill 2120 we wanted to highlight. That provides the TIDC, the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, the ability to provide services, oversight, and improvements in court-appointed legal counsel for children and indigent parents in child protection cases filed by DFPS. TIDC has been working quite a bit in the last couple of years from bills from last session on collecting data on representation in those types of cases. So this would further their involvement and the ability to collect information. Related to TIDC, I wanted to make sure that for those of you who haven't heard, Jeff Burkhart, who is the executive director of TIDC, is winding down his time and will be leaving TIDC. The TIDC board has appointed Scott Ehlers as the interim director for TIDC until a new executive director is appointed. Today might be Jeff's last day. I know they were talking about May 12th, but for those of you who have the time, you might send a well-wish note. He's not going far. He's going to the Texas Fair. I know this, the Fair Defense Project. He'll be going there. So he'll be around and working in sort of the same field. And the last bill that we want to highlight was House Bill 2037. This is a pretty lengthy bill, and it's a byproduct of the Chapter 55 Advisory Committee. That advisory committee convened in 2021, and the bill is a very comprehensive revision to Chapter 55, and its goal is to streamline processes for children in the system. That passed the House and it's been received in the Senate, but has not yet been assigned to a committee. And as we're in the last 2.5 weeks of session, every stage that the bill is at is pretty critical to its success or its failure. So we're watching these bills on a constant basis. Next week will be a busy week when it comes to legislative session. Those are the types of items that we thought might be relevant to the commission. OCA is always working on many other projects that are relevant to the courts across the state. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think that was a terrific update. There's certainly a lot going on. There's a lot there to unpack though, so I'm sure we'll get a question. Here we go. From Senator West's office, Chris Kearing.
Yes. Sorry, Jeffrey. I think I missed the last couple of the bills you were mentioning. Could you just run down that list again real quick, just so I can get the bill numbers?
Yeah, the 4 bills that I highlighted, HB 3186 on the Texas Youth Diversion Act. Senate Bill 728 is on mental health NICS reporting for children. Senate Bill 2120 was TIDC's oversight into court-appointed legal counsel for children, and then House Bill 2037 was the Chapter 55 revisions.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then I'll just join Jeffrey in thanking Jeff Cox for his contributions, and then close by saying thanks to you, Jeffrey. We know you are swamped at this very minute, so thank you for making time for the commission. We appreciate your contribution.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Now we have a special presentation. Shanti Khanna is a fellow at the Austin Community Law Center. She's a project regarding reinstatement of parental rights, which we had a significant change to in the 87th legislative session. And so she is here to update us on that important work. Shanti, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Ms. Bernstein, I believe I've sent you my presentation if you want to go ahead and share screen. So again, my name is Shanti Khanna. I am a Four Girls Foundation Fellow at Austin Community Law Center, and I have 2 years of funding to explore this brand new change in the law that allows for reinstatement of parental rights. Specifically, I provide direct services representation to some of the first parents in the state who are petitioning under this brand new law. Now, whenever I tell folks that I do this work, they want to know how this reinstatement law is functioning and operating. So I would love to share some observations from some of the first cases that I've seen. Now, I want to start with a brief overview of the reinstatement process. Now, I know y'all are probably familiar with this law, but just as a refresher, petitioners are eligible for filing reinstatement if it's been at least 2 years since involuntary termination in a DFPS suit. So this doesn't cover private termination suits. It's just suits brought by the department. And children have to still be in the conservatorship of DFPS. They can't have been adopted. They can't be subject to a written adoption placement agreement. Additionally, petitioners have to provide a form to the department 45 days in advance of filing the petition. Once they provide that notice form, they can set an evidentiary hearing within 60 days. After that hearing, a judge can grant the petition, deny the petition, or render 6 months of temporary orders where parents can complete services and have visitation with their children in preparation for family reunification. Now, when I started opening intakes for my project, what I found is that a lot of parents did not know whether they were eligible for reinstatement of their rights. They had lost contact with their kids. Remember, it had been years since their initial CPS case, and they didn't know if their kids had been adopted or subject to a written adoption placement agreement. So I've been working with the department to provide steps to take in cases like those. In those cases, I would identify a potentially eligible petitioner, provide notice to the department, and in response to that notice, the department would provide a statement of eligibility back to my client without any identifying information about an adoptive family, simply saying, yes, we believe this case meets reinstatement eligibility requirements, or no, we don't believe that this case meets eligibility requirements. And I've been finding that this system has been working pretty well. I usually get a response back from the department after filing notice within 2 to 3 business days. So whoever is running that account where I'm providing those email notices, great job. I think it's going super well. So I wanted to start off by talking about some of the great things that I'm seeing in my reinstatement project. The good news is that terminated parents who are coming to my project know about this change in the law. The vast majority of my clients come to my project after searching the internet. They're Googling, what can I do to get my kids back after a CPS case? And they're finding materials published by TLSC and by Trala, and a lot of them are calling in through the family helpline as well and finding my project that way. The other piece of good news is that the majority of terminated parents coming to my project have made substantial rehabilitative changes to their lives. They've gotten sober, they've found housing and employment, they've ended abusive relationships, they've set healthy boundaries with those in their life, they've sought treatment for mental illness. So I am seeing that parents are not in the same place that they were when their rights were terminated. Again, the department is providing eligibility information to terminated parents in return for that notice form. So I've been trying to spread the word amongst my clients and folks who are interested in filing for reinstatement pro se that even if they don't know for sure if they're eligible for reinstatement, it's worth sending in that form and getting information back. And everyone I've worked with, all the professionals in this community, seem really enthusiastic about figuring out how to make this new policy operate efficiently. And that has been wonderful to see. Now, here's the bad news, or at least the part I struggle with. And this little graphic on the side is how I feel when I deal with these statutory ambiguities. It's unclear at this time if filing the 45-day notice preserves a parent's eligibility to file for reinstatement. So I've had several cases so far where I filed the 45-day notice on behalf of the parent, and within those 45 days, the department takes action to render that parent ineligible for reinstatement. So they find the child an adoptive placement, execute a written adoption placement agreement. Sometimes they even get an adoption finalized in that very short period of time. Now, these cases are kids who have been languishing in foster care, eligible for adoption for years. So I find it hard to believe it's purely coincidental that an adoption takes place within this very short period of time. I'm concerned that rushed adoptions are a litigation tactic that's being used to defeat reinstatement, or that the department has adoptive placements available for these children, but no incentive to finalize adoptions until a parent is coming with a reinstatement suit. There's also an ambiguity around whether kids who have not been adopted but are not in the conservatorship of the department are still eligible to be subject to a reinstatement suit. So this comes up when I see a parent whose children are with the other biological parent. So the department terminated rights on mom, for example, and put the kids with dad. Now, on the face of the statute, those parents are eligible for reinstatement, but that's more of a private custody matter almost than an issue involving the department at that point. So it's unclear whether, I mean, I don't think that the legislature anticipated that type of case when they were writing the statute. The other ambiguity is whether parents who signed a voluntary affidavit of relinquishment are eligible. So the statute says in order to file the petition, rights have to be involuntarily terminated in a suit brought by the department. Now, a lot of parents who signed affidavits of voluntary relinquishment would argue that that was done involuntarily. It was done in anticipation of losing their rights at trial. And at the time that they signed these affidavits, there was no option for reinstatement. So they didn't realize that it would potentially prejudice their rights. But it's unclear, and I've had cases where some of the other parties believed that a voluntary affidavit of relinquishment did not preserve eligibility. Now, another issue I've run into is when children over the age of 12 do not consent to reinstatement. The statute says that in order for the judge to grant reinstatement of parental rights, so not in order for the parent to petition, but in order for the judge to grant reinstatement, children over the age of 12 or over have to consent. It's very unclear if they have to consent at the time of notice, time of petition filing, or at the time the order is rendered. So could I, if I had a parent with a child over 12 who did not consent, could I go to court and ask the judge to render 6 months of temporary orders, including family therapy, including visitation to help aid reunification efforts, and then at the final hearing at the end of that 6 months, then ask for reinstatement if the child is willing to consent at that point? These are some of the issues that I'm running into as I'm seeing this new law in action. But that's not it. I've got a whole nother slide of statutory ambiguities. I have some parents who have taken steps towards rehabilitation, but are not able to have their child with them full-time. Can a parent file for reinstatement to solely have visitation or possessory conservatorship? There's nothing on the face of the statute to prevent it. I have not had one of these cases yet, but I've had parents inquire about it. And, I'm not sure what to advise them because I don't think that it's what the legislature intended. It's very clear from the legislative history that this law was intended to fix the issue of children languishing in foster care without option for permanency. But I think the way the statute is drafted, the scope could be far beyond what the legislature had originally intended. Now, procedurally, is reinstatement filed under a new cause number? Now, I have spent so much time on the phone with court clerks across the state that don't know how to handle this new area of the law, and it's confusing, and there isn't much guidance within on the face of the statute. The statute says petitioner must file, which makes it sound like it should be a new cause number, but any order that gives the parent reinstatement of their rights is going to be a final order under the original cause number. So it's unclear if it's supposed to be a linked cause number or a brand new cause number. And if it is the old cause number, does that give the parent the right to attend any permanency hearings that take place before they get to be heard on reinstatement, or the right to file any motions prior to that reinstatement hearing? Another ambiguity is, does the parental preference doctrine apply? Now, the parental preference doctrine is present across the family code in a lot of different contexts, but it's the idea that parents, biological parents, are probably the best option for their kids. Now, say you have an adoptive family and you have parents seeking reinstatement. Do the parents get any sort of preference? Now, the statute doesn't say either way. The last ambiguity that I wanted to bring up, but not the last ambiguity that I've noticed, this is just a small snippet of the problems that I found with this statute, is how early can parents file this 45-day notice? So it has to be filed 45 days before the petition, but that doesn't necessarily mean exactly 45 days before. It means at least 45 days before. So it's possible that a parent could file this notice immediately after their rights are terminated, and then years later file the petition and be eligible for reinstatement, which I don't think is what was intended with that notice. I've also seen a number of cases where family reunification was appropriate, but reinstatement was not the best option to get there. So one example is if a child has special needs a high level of care that the parent cannot provide without department support. In that case, it might be better to make the parent a licensed foster care provider so the department can continue providing resources for that family. Another situation I've seen is when the child is about to age out of foster care and would lose all of the age out benefits if the parent's rights are reinstated. Third, I've seen cases where all the parties agree the child should be back with the parent, but they disagree as to reinstatement eligibility. For example, if the parent signed that affidavit of voluntary relinquishment and a party is arguing that that doesn't make them eligible for reinstatement, then a parent could be designated a non-parent sole managing conservator instead of reinstatement. But I think reinstatement is a wonderful tool for families. There have already been several families across the state who have been reunited by reinstatement, and there will undoubtedly be even more to come. And the powerful thing that reinstatement does that the family code did not allow for prior to 2021 is parents can file the reinstatement suit themselves. They don't have to wait for the department to come find them and name them sole managing conservator of the child. They can actually bring suit. They can take ownership and try and reunite their families themselves, which is powerful. So I want to open it up to questions. If anyone has any questions about any of the work that I've done, I don't want to get into case specifics in case I have any cases that are pending in any of the judges' courts that are here, but I'd be happy to talk on a general level.
Justice Huddle.
So a lot here, a lot of work coming down the pike on these issues for the judges on the call. I'm just wondering about sort of data. How many cases like this are there that you know of, or do you know? Do they all come to your project, or are there ones out there you don't know about? And can you just give us a sense of scale?
There are certainly cases out there that I don't know about. I find out about more cases every day. There are about 5 that I'm working on that I know a parent is eligible, and I'm moving them through the process. I have several more where I'm not sure if a parent is eligible, and I'm helping them file that notice and find out. I also know that Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid's Family Defense Project is working on a lot of reinstatement cases. In fact, I'll actually be moving my project over to Trala at the end of the month. So I'm planning on joining forces with Cindy Dyer over there. And I know that there are a lot of private attorneys out there that have filed reinstatement as well. Yes, Mr. West.
Oh, I think Renee, Ms. Costello had her hand up before me, so I'll let her go first.
Thank you, appreciate it. I don't want to speak for the department, but I have attended a couple of their presentations. It's my understanding from William Drake McKeska, who was on the first parental reinstatement case, as well as Julie Pinger and a couple of other individuals I've spoken to, that the department is taking the position that a voluntary relinquishment does fall under involuntary per statute. So you said you're still having some issues with attorneys that do not feel that that is true. Is that more of the ad litem's that you're having that issue with, and how are you handling that in court?
So I have that come up. I'm having that come up in a case right now, and it is the ADA that brought up that issue. So maybe that has to, I don't know if there's a way to get department messaging out there. But it is the ADA in that particular case that raised the issue. I haven't had an ad litem raise the issue yet. If that answers your question, let's move on to Mr. West.
Okay, so my question was kind of generally regarding all of the statutory ambiguity issues you talk about. Do you have like kind of a ballpark estimate of the number of cases that in your research that has impacted? I know you discussed for the eligibility already, but I'm kind of just like big picture, these kinds of statutory ambiguity issues, like how many cases do you think, like ballpark, it affects each year or for any given period?
It's really difficult for me to give numbers at this point, just because there still have been so few reinstatement cases. I can tell you the issue where I have concerns about rushed adoptions have come up more than once, come up enough that I feel it's more than mere coincidence that an adoption or an adoption placement agreement is taking place in that 45-day period. In terms of the other statutory ambiguities, I can tell you that each one on that list had come up either in a case or in a parent I'm doing intake with has had a question about the statute related to at least everything on that list. So they're not merely hypothetical, but very few at this point have had more than one case related to a specific ambiguity. So at this point, I'm kind of identifying issues. I think next step, as I increase my capacity for intakes, moving over to Trala, would be to collect some real usable data on how often specific issues are coming up.
Okay, because I think the senator would be very interested to kind of know more about that and see, I guess in your opinion, do you think the statutory ambiguities would be best cleared up with like further legislative action, or should that be like a rulemaking issue that the department issues like clarifying language for?
I
And
would
if you don't know, that's also fine.
I would love to see some clarity from the legislature. I think that would be really helpful.
Okay.
And
Thank
Ms. Bernstein, would you mind calling on folks just in case I can't see some hands that are popping up?
Absolutely. Jeff Stuckey's up next.
Hello, Shanti. My name is Tom Stuckey. I'm one of the associate judges. So I'm interested if you have been involved in any cases that have been denied by the court, like if there's been a reinstatement that's been denied, and if so, did they just, was there, instead of doing a reinstatement, they just did like a change in conservatorship? I mean, was there an alternative? Because we're not seeing the data at this point. I mean, the only ones I'm aware of are all the ones that have been granted. I don't know of one that I've heard about that's been denied at this point.
I had a case that was denied by an associate judge before I got on the case, and I was supposed to have a de novo hearing, which never happened because the child was put in an adoptive placement before we could get to that hearing. In that case, denial was based on a lack of rehabilitation by the parent, or I guess a lack of evidence on rehabilitation. Although that was a 1 hour hearing, so the parent didn't have what I believe would have been an appropriate chance to present evidence.
And just as a follow-up, you mentioned that there's, I guess, a contact that you have at the department. Is that out there publicly? Like who is it that the parents are supposed to be contacting in the department to see if, whether a parent is eligible or not? Because I'm sure that's contact information that my attorneys in my wheel would really like to have and benefit from.
Sure. So on the notice form, there's a DFPS parental reinstatement email address. And that is where you're supposed to submit that form. So when I've been submitting those forms, I will include in the body of the email that I would like a determination of eligibility, and then I've been receiving emails back in response.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Anything else?
I think there was one question that came through in the Q&A, but I actually think it's for DFPS, and it's asking if reinstatement is coded in the impact system. Erica, I don't know if you can comment on that.
Yeah, so I was just asking Hector about that. If I know that we track it manually, but I don't think it's in our impact system, which is it's hard to pull data out when it's not an impact. I'll verify that, but I don't believe we have it. I think we're just manually keeping track of how many requests we're getting through the mailbox, because my staff at state office are the ones that receive those requests. I was just asking them, are we tracking also like the end result of them? I know that we've had one reunification that I am aware of that all the parental rights got reinstated. So it's a good time for me to kind of see what we can pull and what we do have, but I don't believe it's tracked in our impact system.
Thank you. Anything else? Well, thank you so much, Shanti, for that excellent presentation and for your work. It's wonderful and important. So thank you very much for all you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all having me and hearing about my cases.
So looks like it's approaching 2 quickly. Is there any new business that we need to cover? Please let us know what you all think would be helpful in terms of our next meeting. That type of input is very, very helpful. For example, that presentation that was just made, I thought was very interesting and very helpful. So please let us know if you have any ideas like that for our next meeting. Please remember that we will be meeting in person on September 15th in Austin, although I don't think we know the exact location yet, but we will let you know. And then we will be meeting virtually again on November 3rd. And again, please put that on your calendars if it's not already there. And again, thank you all so much for all the work you do in this very, very important area of the law. We're very, very appreciative of it. The entire court is, and we just cannot emphasize enough how much we appreciate you and the staff at the Children's Commission. Thank you all very, very much. And with that, let's have a very nice weekend. Thank you all. Bye-bye.